Okay. I get so far behind, seems like bogging down with this. It's not designed to be a verse by verse study per se, like Steve's doing in the auditorium, but try to cover the highlights anyhow. We're talking about the other day, and I said, it's not like having to cover everything for the kids because I got adults that can read it for themselves. So maybe you are, I hope, reading the text. So a little disclaimer about our pictures here. Got a lot of pictures tonight of various things we'll look at here in a minute. So in John chapter 9, with the blind man, in John 9 is pretty easy, but the whole thing in 9 carries across into 10, and that's where it gets more complicated or complex, maybe I should say, as Jesus is teaching kind of based on what happened here, I think. We'll tie it together if we can when we get there. So the man's blind. He's an adult man of age, comes up later. And the question comes up, who sinned? This man or his parents? Well, he was born blind. So you got to think about, how did this man sin? Well, a couple of comments from commentaries. Some of the rabbis held that not only could the sin of the parents leave its mark on the infant, but also the infant could sin in the mother's womb. Some of the things they were teaching. Secondly, the disciples thought it was possible because the disciples asked. Remember, the disciples, this is not the Jews, it's the disciples asking who sinned, this man or his parents. So they had that in their mind. The disciples thought that possibly the man had sinned either in a previous state of existence, according to the doctrine of transmigration of the souls, or probably as an infant before birth. To the Jews who attributed intelligence to unborn children, this is the last of a natural idea. And of course, he goes on in the comment here to say there are millions like that today who think that anytime we suffer or have something happen to us, we deserved it because we did something wrong. We sinned. Some people are that way today, thinking about that. But nobody sinned, Jesus said. Jesus said neither. It's an opportunity to reveal God's work through this man that's been blind all these years, to give an occasion for this to happen. So Jesus made the clay and put it on his eyes and told him to go wash in the pool of Siloam. Now, I sent you a link to a video, an article. I hope you had time to read it, about this pool. This is a picture of what was discovered to be the pool of Siloam before they discovered the new one in 2007. So we'll get some other pictures available here in a minute. But pool of clear water fed by one of the springs, Egon Springs there. So the man did what Jesus told him, went and washed in the pool, and he could see. Okay. Note, when could he see? Okay. After he did what Jesus told him to go do. Remind you of somebody else back in the Old Testament. Go dip in the Jordan River 7 times, right? 6 times. Did he still have leprosy? Yeah, it took that 7th time. Okay, so it just links obedience to. The man had faith in what Jesus told him. You know who he was, but this man told him to go wash in the pool, so he had enough faith to go do it. Not faith that he was the Son of God. He didn't know that yet. But the faith in what the man said to go do it. But it took the doing, the obedience is my point there from that point. So then they ask him, who did this for you? And he says, a man named Jesus. Now, that would not be uncommon either. I mean, Jesus was as much a common name then as John is now. I mean, it's not like a very, very special name. Jesus was his name. So it could be any number of people named Jesus. So here's some more pictures. And Trent's up here can straighten me out if I get this all mixed up here. But this is the pool. That one I just showed you, I think, was this area here. And this is the new one where they discovered it. We'll see some pictures of that in 2007, I think the article said. Steps leading down there. And this is the new pool. They still got more excavation. We'll see a picture in a minute. It's going to have this whole area out here marked off. So I think the pool was a lot bigger than this. The steps leading down there. Some more pictures of that. This is that model of the city of Jerusalem. We looked at with the temple. Again, it was the pool would be down this area down here. So there's a pool there. This is a artist drawing of a man going and washing his eyes in the pool there. Teaching kids classes, this may be something you'll go look at for them. So the picture I had to start with was in this area here, the original pool they thought was there. And then this is the step area here. And I think this whole area here may be involved in the pool, as I understand from my feedback from my sources over here that I got in the article I sent to you. Yeah, it shows it there. There's the original pool area and then the new one there. So when the people realize the man is now seeing, they question, is this the man that was blind? Or the people get mixed up. Some say, yeah, he is. It was him. Others say, no, it's just somebody like him. He said, no, it's me. I'm the one that was blind and now I see. So they take him to the Pharisees. Why? Why take him to the Pharisees? One or two reasons I can think of. But I got thoughts. What's the Pharisees' attitude toward Jesus? They want to kill him, right? What day was this healing done on? The Sabbath, again, as we've had several times before. So what would the Pharisees have said Jesus did when he made the clay to put on the man's eyes? He's working on the Sabbath again. Okay, so if they were carrying him to the Pharisees to get Jesus deeper in trouble, if that was their intent, well, here he is. He worked. He made this clay and made this man. The other side of it could be what? They taken him to him there as evidence of who he is. This man, Jesus, healed this man that's been blind since birth. So maybe this will help you Pharisees to understand he's really who he says he is, okay? So it could be, I see at least those two possibilities and taking him there. But as one writer says, the attitude of the Pharisees here shows the folly of supposing that evidence of any kind for persuade men whose purpose it is to disbelieve. They don't intend to believe about it anyway. So, big point was it was done on the Sabbath. So what's the Pharisees' reaction? How can a sinner do such a thing? That's the key. There's a lot of what's going to go on here. How can a sinner do such a thing? So, Jesus, a sinner, in their book, made this man see. That's the whole question up here. How could a sinner do this? They're not going to believe it really happened. They know it happened because the man could see. But they're not going to give credit to Jesus. So they get his parents. I asked, is this your son that was blind? They said, yeah, it is. Well, how does he see? We don't know. He's of age, you ask him. Now, what was their fear? What had already been said. Anybody who sides with him is going to be cast out of the synagogue, cast out. Now, we don't think about that much, but those of you who have seen movies about the Amish that shun someone, I mean, you see movies, literally somebody walks in the door, has been shunned, they all turn their backs on them. That's more like what this was like. And in the Jewish community, you couldn't find work, you couldn't buy goods, anything. If you were cast out of the synagogue, you were a foreigner outside, you're gone. So this is a real deep, serious thing to be cast out of the synagogue, which is what they threatened to do. So he said, old enough to ask him. They're fearing being cast out. So they asked the man again, who did this for you? And they said, look, this man's a sinner. He couldn't have done it. Just give God the glory for it. So what have they done? They've now admitted that a miracle took place, right? But they just want to attribute it to Jesus. Just give God the glory for it. We know this man is a sinner. That's entrenched in them so deeply that they won't have it any other way. So he could not have done this. So he's a sinner. So now the blind man, formerly blind man, really starts to get, you wonder how smart he really was based on what he's going to do. He said, only one thing I know. You know he's a sinner. How do you know that? Because you feel it inside, right? You think in your head he's a sinner. He said, I don't know about that. But what did he know? I was blind, and now I see. Any doubt about that? None whatsoever. So he said, I know, you think you know that? I know this. That's the point he's getting to. Okay? So, another artist picture of that. So now we get this verse you hear talked about sometime, that God does not hear sinners' prayers. Okay? So let's talk about that just a little bit. Verse 31, John 9:31. Now we know that God does not hear sinners, but if anyone's a worshiper of God and does his will, he hears him. So you got two things here. God does not hear sinners. God does hear those who know him and do his will. So one or the other. God doesn't hear sinners. God does hear those who hear him, worship him, do his will. Who said this? The blind man. This is not a statement made by Jesus. You might think Jesus is teaching here while you hear this verse quoted sometime. You know, we know that God didn't hear sinners' prayers. Think, well, that's just a fact. It's the blind man that said this. So just keep that in mind. I think that's pretty important there. So Pharisees come right back. You were born in your sin. You're trying to teach us? What he's saying here? If you excuse the old word, he ain't got started good yet. That's what he's about to tell him. So let's look at his logic. What's he going to say? Here's a blind man. God does not hear sinners. It's a point y'all are making. God does not hear sinners. If a man worships God and does his will, God hears him. Okay? We got that part laid down. Or if you look at it this way, God does not hear sinners, but he hears those who worship him and do his will. God heard Jesus in the working of this great miracle. Therefore, what's your conclusion? Major premise, minor premise, maybe you had that in school somewhere back down the way. Okay, if this is true and this is true, the conclusion's got to be true. Therefore, Jesus is not a sinner. He's a worshiper of God and doing his will, or he couldn't have done this miracle. So man lays it out for him. No man ever opened the eyes of a blind man before, like this. Not known to have happened like that. Therefore, if this man did not come from God, he would not have the power. If he didn't come from God, he wouldn't have the power. But the blind man had his conclusion. God does hear this man and empowered him to do this miracle. How did I know? Because I can see now. So he just lays a logic out there for him based on the premise that they made and the fact that he can see. And God must hear this man because he's the one that made me see. Does he know who Jesus is yet? Nope. He's just going to the very facts of the fact that he couldn't see, but now he can. So, this man is no sinner. This man is from God. Therefore. So, Jesus comes back and finds him. Well, first, they cast him out of the synagogue now. Not his parents. So they kind of bowed out of it. But they do cast him out. So Jesus, verse 35, he heard they had cast him out. When he had found him, he said to him, do you believe in the Son of God? The man says, who is he, Lord? Now, it's not Lord like Lord, deity Lord. The Lord as a recognized. Who is he, Lord, that I may believe in him? I'm going to read half this next sentence. I'm going to stop. Jesus said to him, you have both seen him. Wait a minute. When did the man see him? The man was blind. When Jesus was there, he put the clay on his eyes. He went and washed. Jesus was going the other direction. So when did he see him? I'm asking somebody. When did he? I don't know. The only way I can reconcile this little first part here is he saw him through the eyes of faith of what he did when Jesus told him to go wash. Because he had not up to this point that Jesus found him, far as I know, physically seen him. Okay? I don't know if you caught that, reading through this verse or not. But I don't think he had physically seen Jesus up to this point now. But the last part of it is true. It is he who's talking with you. You've seen him, you've been with him before. You didn't physically see him, but he's the one that's talking to you. So the man makes he makes the logical conclusion that he tried to teach the Pharisees. If you're the man who made the clay put on my eyes, I went and washed as you told me to. I was blind, now I see. Therefore what? Lord, I believe. No doubt in my mind about it. I'm the proof. It was not hard for him to draw his conclusion with that. Reminds you of, I got on here, yeah. Reminds you of of Thomas. When the apostles had been together, Thomas was not with them. And he said, I won't believe unless I can put my finger in the nail prints and my hand in the side. That's what John 20, verse 27 is about. And Jesus told him to reach your hand here and do this. Don't be unbelieving, but believing. And the verse is not on the scribe, 28. Thomas answered and said, my Lord and my God. There's no indication that Thomas at that point reached out and touched Jesus physically. He knew then who he was. But here's the point we need to see. Jesus said, Thomas, because you've seen me, you believe. Blessed are those who have not seen me, and yet they believe. That's where we fit in. The only way we've seen Jesus, go back to the play on words here, the only way we have seen Jesus is the way that same blind man saw him to start with. You have both seen him, he's the one speaking to you. But blessed are those who have not seen and still believe. Come to us. And we had this, back when I did this 3 years ago, I guess, we had the theme for the year was increase my faith. So it kind of tied in here. Okay, that's a quick run through John chapter 9. Thoughts, questions, comments out of this nice, quiet crowd that never says anything. Tracy, go ahead.
Just a quick one.
Sure.
We notice here Jesus used yet a different way to heal this man. So you can't at the end of the day say here's some magical incantation in order to keep. To one he puts and says go wash in the pool. To others he just touches. To others he speaks and says go home. We see that it's not some magic incantation. It's whatever he chooses, which goes forward to what he chose for us today.
Yeah, we've had several things. Yeah, the 10 lepers, on the way to the priest, they realized they were cleansed like that. Well, the one man that they did had to do again because he saw men walking like trees. Others just wanted to touch him with his garment. That's all it took. So lots of different methods, if you will, Jesus used there.
Wayne.
Sure.
Another thing I kind of thought of, you kind of wonder, why do they think this? Why is Jesus a sinner? They keep going back to that. I assume it's because he did this on the Sabbath.
Yeah,
so
that's what I come up with. Yeah. I don't know that there's anything that I know of in the law that would prohibit him from making that little clay and putting it on the man's eyes. But all the hedges that the Pharisees put around the Sabbath laws, I'm sure he violated one of theirs. Not the law, because he wouldn't violate the law. But I'm sure he violated one of their traditional protection, they call them, traditions he put around the law there. So therefore they labeled him, not just this time, but several times he's healed on the Sabbath. And they labeled him a sinner because of that. Okay, so now we go to chapter 10, where it gets a little deeper because it's not just a narrative story type thing like that first part was. So let's spend a little time looking at chapter 10. Before we do get deep into it, look down at verse 21 in chapter 10. Others said, these are not the words of one who has a demon. When they accuse Jesus of that. Can a demon open the eyes of the blind? So my point is, I think this chapter is going to really ties in, even though we may not see it that way as much because we usually study it, maybe it's a standalone chapter. It ties right in with the other part. That's what they refer to there in verse 21. After Jesus goes through all this teaching to get down there, he ties it right back to the blind man in chapter 9. So keep that part in mind as we go through the rest of it. Okay? It's not like just chapter break, whole new story. No, it's a continuation of what was already there. So let's look at this in little pieces to start with. I'm going to do something I don't do a lot of, and that's we actually read some of the text here to kind of get it in our minds. We're now, this information, we're in the fall of the year. The Feast of Tabernacles is finished. And so think about the time frame we're getting into. So this part here is probably October type part of the year for us. Verse 1. Most assuredly I say to you, he who does not enter the sheepfold by the door, but climbs up some other way, the same as a thief and a robber. He who enters by the door is a shepherd of the sheep. To him the doorkeeper opens, sheep hear his voice. He calls the sheep by his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he brings them out, his own sheep, he goes before them. The sheep follow him, for they know his voice. Yet they will by no means follow a stranger, will flee from him, for they do not know the voice of a stranger. Jesus used illustration, but they did not understand the things which he spoke to them. So why has he jumped off into this shepherd idea here? Who's he trying to contrast? He's trying to contrast him with who? The evil shepherds that are leading the Jews, right? He's trying to, the Pharisees. He's trying to start drawing a contrast. The sheep know his voice, the ones who follow him do, and they're going to follow him. So he's using this, something very familiar to them, this shepherd type idea here, to try to draw this. So Jesus is the true shepherd, contrasted with the evil shepherds of Israel back in the previous chapter. Robbers climb over the fence. The true shepherd walks through the door of the sheepfold. We'll see some sheepfolds in a minute on the screen. The sheep know his voice. They'll follow him. They won't follow the voice of a stranger. Okay. So let's kind of stop there. We've read through verse 6. So that's the first part of his illustration there. Then he goes, and we'll read now through 9 through 15 to get the next little piece of it here. 9, I am the door. We've already had 2 or 3 of the I ams in John. We've talked about already. Here's one more of them. It's right here. I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved. He will go in and out and find pasture. The thief does not come except to steal, to kill, and to destroy. I have come that they may have life, that they may have it more abundantly. I am the good shepherd. The next I am, right here behind it. The good shepherd gives life for the sheep, gives his life for the sheep. He who is a hireling that's not the shepherd. The one who does not own the sheep sees a wolf coming, leaves the sheep, flees. The wolf catches the sheep and scatters them. The hireling flees because he's a hireling, does not care about the sheep. I'm the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and am known by my own. As the Father knows me, even so I know the Father, and lay down my life for the sheep. So he just continuing his illustration here again, himself with the evil stuff that's going on with these leaders here. So there's some sheepfolds. I got several of them on here we can look at. This particular one, they got like rocks around here. You can see all the rocks out in the fields. Problem to pick them up. As far as having them available there, and then the gate up here where they can come in through the door. It mentions the dark dirt in the middle there. I would imagine that comes from sheep dropping, so I wouldn't know. But here's another one made with a cave in the background here with a place inside over here to come in. So you get the idea of that. They made different kind of the door. This actually was made by Steve here, a picture. There's another one that's got rocks around it and then actual fence around the other part of it over here. There's a shepherd out in front, leading the sheep, not behind, not driving like you would cattle, but leading. They know his voice. And if you read a lot about this stuff, they would put a lot of different flocks those big sheepfolds at night. Just mix them all up, dump them there together. Next morning, shepherd comes and he starts calling his sheep out, and they know his voice, and they follow him. The rest of them stay there. It's kind of us not being used to dealing with sheep. That's a little hard to kind of understand, but they actually are that obedient to the voice of the shepherd, which is a big part of Jesus' illustration here. Here they are going in through the door of the sheepfold. So Jesus said, I'm the good shepherd. Good shepherd gives his life for his sheep. The hireling flees. I'm the good shepherd. Again, it says in verse 14, I know my sheep, and I am known by them. Okay? I am known by my own. Other sheep I have, which are not of this fold. We didn't read that verse. Now we'll get down to verse 16. He said, other sheep I have, which are not of this fold. I'm going to bring them in. They'll hear my voice, and there'll be one flock, one shepherd. So what's he referring to now? Gentiles coming in, okay? That's what he's going to do. So we can blend them all together here. One flock and one shepherd. If you would look over to Ezekiel chapter 34 with me for just a minute. I'd like to talk about a couple of things over there. It's a chapter on, back in the Old Testament here, on, they got a lot about the shepherd and the sheep in it. Chapter 34 of Ezekiel. I'm not going to take time to read all this chapter. You probably heard sermons made from particularly the first 10 verses of it before. But basically the first 10 verses, if you kind of scatter your finger down through there, you'll see that he's pronouncing a woe on the shepherds of Israel who have fed themselves and have not fed and cared for the sheep, people of Israel. So it says, this is one of those things where you got a dual meaning to what's being said. It applies to them at that time, and it applies to in a prophecy type thing both. So it's one of those dual purpose type packages. And we'll see that more. We'll get down a little further into it. And then if you're down verse 11 through 16, God speaks here now. And he's going to bind up and care for those sheep who have not been properly cared for. The shepherds of Israel have not properly cared for their sheep. So then he picks up in verse 11 through 16. And God says, I'm going to step in. I'm going to take care of them. I'm going to bind up the wounds, and I'm going to take care of the flock. And then 17 through 22, he talks about sheep to sheep and judging between sheep to find those who are his or not. So there are going to be sheep coming to this fold that are not his sheep. He doesn't want those. He wants those that will hear his voice and come out. So that's kind of what's in 17 through 22. Now, 23 and 24 is on the screen. I'm letting all that to get down to this. Okay, this is about the shepherd not caring for the sheep, God stepping in, and then making the judgment on which sheep will be accepted there and taken care of. So he says, chapter 34, verse 23. I will establish one shepherd over them. He shall feed them, my servant David. When does Ezekiel live? During the time of captivity, right? A long time is after David. David died probably 1000 BC, maybe a little bit later than that. 980, 940. Well, probably 980, maybe 60. And this is more up. Syrians have already gone into captivity at 721. Here we're probably 300 years, at least after David, by now. But what did he say? I will establish one shepherd over them. He shall feed my sheep, my servant David. Not physically David, prophecy again. He shall feed them, be their shepherd. I, the Lord, will be their God. My servant David, a prince among them. I, the Lord, have spoken. Who is he talking about? How many times we talked about how does Matthew start his gospel out? About the third or fourth word in there is son of David. And he mentions it several times. He talked about, particularly in Matthew. Jesus, the son of David, the lineage of David there. So it's just another prophecy I want to go back and pick up. It's all about shepherds and sheep, just like what we're studying over here in John chapter 10. Very prophetic of Jesus coming to be the shepherd of Israel, where they had not been cared for properly by the shepherds who were supposed to be caring for them, which kind of parallels a lot what's going on in John chapter 10. Okay, thoughts about that, anybody? Going back to that. Okay. Then he mentioned in verse 18 about him dying. He says, no one takes somebody's life. No one takes it from me. I lay it down on myself. I have power to lay it down, power to take it up again. This command I received from my Father. He already mentioned, but what does the hireling do when the wolf comes in? He runs. What's the shepherd willing to do? Give his life for the sheep, right? But he's saying, I'm going to give my life when it's my turn. Pharisees, you already tried several times to kill me. It didn't work. It's not going to work until I'm ready. I lay it down willingly. I take it up again, and the Father's behind this. The Father's one who's given me this command to do this. And they say, he's got a demon. Again, as they said before. But the question then is asked, how can a man with a demon make a blind man see? Verse 21 we makes it start with. Their logic does not hold at all. So they try to kill him again, but it's not his time yet. He would know they wouldn't be successful to them. We talked about that several times. So, good shepherd. Good shepherd. How do the sheep view the good shepherd? What I want you to do now, Johnny's going to read for us Psalm 23. If you want to turn to there, Psalm 23. Look at a very familiar psalm. But I want us with this background of the shepherd caring for the sheep. Jesus being the good shepherd, us being his sheep. As Johnny reads this, I've asked him to read it kind of slowly and just give a little pause for each phrase almost. I want us to think about each phrase there in Psalm 23 and how the good shepherd is caring for us, his sheep. Johnny?
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
David writing it because of his knowledge of the sheep, but how so much it ties right in with John chapter 10. The good shepherd, known by his sheep, listening for his voice, obey his voice, call out to that. All right, anything else on this part before we kind of change subjects here in chapter 10? Thoughts from anybody? Major comparison, I think, between those shepherds, chapter 9, the Pharisees, and Jesus. Same thing happened back in Ezekiel chapter 34. All right, we got on verse 22. There's a gap between verse 21 and 22 of about 2 months. Because now we're getting up more into wintertime. Where we were in the fall of the year, like I said, start with maybe about October. About 2 months probably later than that, more like the December time frame here. There's the Feast of Dedication. Now, this is not a feast that we're familiar with in the Old Testament. It's not one of the 3 major feasts that all the Jewish men come to Jerusalem for. This feast started up 164 BC when Judas Maccabeus rededicated the temple after it had been abused big time with the offering of the pig in it and all this stuff that went on. And this is the background for today's Hanukkah. So the time frame would fit in, when that fits in now. So the time frame we're up here working in now. So Jesus is walking in Solomon's porch. And I think I've got a slide that's got that point out. Just in a minute. December, wintertime. Okay. So here's the menorah, the Hanukkah thing. Is that right? We've seen this before. Okay. Back up. Solomon's porch is that, as I understand, is that name for that long column thing along the backside back there. Some say it actually went back to the time of Solomon. Others doubt the name for Solomon, so kind of read where you want to with that. But it's that. But the next picture I want you to see is the same thing. This is a big scale model. See the guy standing in the back up there looking at it. So I'm sure y'all seen this. Don't go over yet. Look at it here. You ever thought about Jesus walking around in snow? Don't know if he did, but snow does happen over there in the wintertime. Very much so. So it's wintertime now. And there's the portico of Solomon across the back. You hear a lot about the western wall today. It's up here. We looked at the temple and all this other parts earlier. So here's the porch out through here. So then you get down to verse 25. They ask him, tell us plainly, are you the Christ? That's the question at the top of the screen. Are you the Christ? So let's look at the pluses and minuses. Could he do miracles? No doubt. Plus, right? Where's he from? In their minds. Galilee. Plus or minus? Nope. Can't come anything good come out of Galilee. Besides, the son of David will be born in Bethlehem, right? Poor and despised. Plus or minus? No. What are they looking for? Looking for a king to come in, right? They want a conqueror. Meek, gentle, not what they envisioned again. So all these things here are adding up. Are you the Christ? He says, I told you I was. But you didn't believe me. And you won't believe me. You're not my sheep. Go back to the thing again. I give eternal life that will not be taken away, but you got to follow my voice. And we get that phrase you hear sometimes, no one can snatch them from my hand. Calvinists use this very much for the once saved, always saved. You're in God's hands, and nobody can snatch them out. Not what it means. Okay. I got a piece I wanted to read on that. All right. I'll read you one little piece right quick. We got the time. This is by Adam Clarke, who is a major commentator. He's a British Methodist, but a very opposed to Calvinistic things, the predestination and all this stuff. Adam Clarke's remarks regarding the Calvinistic notion are worthy of quotation here. It's going to become a long thing before we get to the is, so listen to it. Here's the quote. Now it is evident that only those who have Christ living in them and governing their souls so that they possess the mind that was in him are his sheep, are those that shall never perish because they have eternal life abiding in them. Therefore, to talk of a man's being one of the elect, one that shall never perish, one who shall have eternal life, who never be plucked out of the hand of God, while he lives in sin, has not Christ in his heart, has either never received or fallen away from the grace of God, is contrary to common sense as it is to the nature of testimonies of the Most High. To take all this stuff that those who would teach, the Calvinistic approach is once you're saved, you're in God's hand and you can't be taken out. You can't be snatched out. Clarke's just saying this is absurd to think of such. Now, so what's the verse saying? No one can snatch them from my hand. True. How do you get out of God's hand? Yeah, you leave it. Okay? You leave it. Your choice. Go back to man's free will. Like he says, to think about somebody who is living in sin, doesn't have Christ in his heart, doesn't have God's grace in his heart anymore. It is there. And then he goes, they really get ready to stone him now. We start talking about what we'll get to more over in John 17, 18, 16, 17, 18. I and my Father are one. The King James Version uses that term there. Here's what he's saying. I, the Father, the creator of all things, judge of all men, father of all spirits, of all flesh, are one. One in nature, one in attributes of the Godhead, one in all operations of those attributes. And it's evident that the Jews understood him in saying that. That's what he's saying. How we know that? Because they want to kill him. They understand what he's saying. They just don't like it. So I'll stop right there. If I come more slides, but we'll get those later. Okay. Thank you.